Greetings, greetings, greetings. Once again, we step forward and share basic information, bringing honorable clarification. And just again, specifically for the free people, the sovereign people, the West Indian, the wild Indian, specifically the Ahuuah members of the Ahuuah Indian Nation in America, that specific society. I must say, complete honor with respect and power out there. We not necessarily can interact with the so-called citizens only because they are presumed to be property of some foreign corporate entity by way of their citizenry. Clarity. Now, with kind of some information, but the information is so vast, so much. I have to take my time, break it down a little bit. But may I address this situation in regards to the US Supreme Court rule 9-1, where I deal with the federal police gun codes. This is when we say sovereignty demands liberty first and rights second. I'm going to go ahead and say, boy, the inferior lower courts have no authority to make rules that abridge any constitution. Yeah. Specifically because of the US round that's to create this thing for those people, nothing that apply to the West Indians. The US Constitutional Bill of Rights. So the inferior lower courts have no ability to make rules that abridge the US Constitutional Bill of Rights. And we said that because according to the Superior Court ruling, they must say the lower courts assert that, guns are inherently violent and can, it has to be regulated. So our point of view is that if a gun is inherently dangerous, then so is a nail, so is a hammer, so is a knife, a fork, a spoon, etc. The US Bill of Rights, no different from the Jamaica Constitutional Bill of Rights, cannot be circumvented or abrogated to satisfy a few profiteering, compromised Supreme Court judges. Yes, I said it unapologetically. And this is why we emphasize civil liberties, which would coincide with sovereignty, freedom, while civil rights would coincide with citizenry, yeah, man, enslavement or slavery. We say civil rights, the courts focus, one, requiring government enforcement to guarantee equal treatment. Example, anti-discrimination statutes, voting rights protection. The court's unanimous ruling emphasized that civil rights are secured through state action, not individual sovereignty. So when I talk about US Supreme Court, this is why I make the US Supreme Court in any location totally aware that I am Superior Court Justice. And I will always be emphasizing this maxim, this principle, this truth. A judge is presumed to know law as rebuttable as it is. It applies all the way to their supreme privy court or any high court where they can impose or imply or infer. Yeah, man, I am he where we put all these so-called judges in their proper place. Remember, I am he who express what law is, what are the elements that constitute law, not these politicians, not these corporate fictions, only the sovereign. So again, the Supreme Court make them own unanimous ruling, not law. And it emphasized that civil rights are secured through state action, not individual sovereignty. Now, in contrast, civil liberties, which is our antithesis, are natural freedoms that exist prior to government, meaning before the existence of government that was instituted among men. Yeah, man. So the freedom and sovereignty exists before all these things. Examples: freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, right to privacy. British would say privacy. Now, civil liberties protect individuals from government intrusion rather than empowering government to regulate equality. This is why Ayman expressed the fact that hold on a second, I don't know where I'm going outside, I just go take a peek. Give thanks. I think it was just my neighbor next door interact with each other. I always check, once I get a itch, I always scratch, man, I go bother wait till nothing fester. Yeah, anyway, when we say liberties protect individuals from government intrusion, meaning their civil liberties restrict the government's actions rather than empowering government to regulate equality. This is why I'm on not enough for them colonial equality, where them ever consider or construe a man such as I to be equal with anybody else or with their fictional entity. This is why we establish and declare our human sovereignty, human dignity, where these colonial authority totally ignore and disregard. Again, clarity. Now, our antithesis narrative. One, delegation versus retention. Civil rights delegate authority to the state. Listen again. for the mainland people them over there, because the mainland operate under a federal, you'd say, system, while Jamaica, like Britain, operate under a centralized system. Two separate and distinct things. I share that information out there. I think, well, I'm never gonna make sure I did share that information. So one, delegation versus retention or retainment. Civil rights delegate authority to the foreign state, while civil liberties retain authority in the individual. This is why on the mainland they were tricked into a civil rights movement opposed to a civil liberty movement, civil liberties movement. And why were they tricked? Because they were funded, the organization, the group is not grassroots, is not organic. It was funded by foreign private, you'd say, financiers, put it that way. And in delegation versus retention or retainment, the ruling affirms delegation. That very same Supreme Court 9-0 ruling affirms delegation, but the antithesis insists sovereignty is diminished when liberty is subordinated to statutory enforcement. And what are statutory orders? What are statutes? Statutes are legal standards used alternatively as rules and regulations. Literally. That's what statutes are, have nothing to do with law. Clarity. Clarity. So when you say them say statutory enforcement, you know it's the business area. It's the inferior area. And the superior area, the Supreme Court division, are complicit. Why? Because they are aware of these activities and because of their profiteering ventures. Yeah, they become complicit. This is why we say the compromise Supreme Court judges. Every one of them are learned people. Every single one of them know the golden rule. And the golden rule is do no wrong, do no harm. Every single one of them has learned people know right from wrong. So they will make a conscious decision to do wrong. Clarity. Clarity. We look at antithesis narrative number 2, control versus freedom. With the colonial political civil rights require control mechanisms such as bylaws, agencies, in courts. The bylaws are the legal standards, the rules and the regulations. Now, with civil liberty requires restraint of government power or authority or control. Again, civil liberty required restraint from government power, authority, and or control. The antithesis argues that equality enforced by control is not true freedom, but regulated servitude. Clarity. Antithesis narrative number 3. Sovereign commentary. The unanimous ruling from the United States Supreme Court judges shows consensus in favor of government's role as arbiter. The antithesis insists that sovereignty lies in the living man or woman, not in the machinery of the state, the colonial political state. Got matriculate from being a colonial entity to a political entity, which is just the face and the names change. But the core, the core operation is what may I express, deception. Now, to elevate civil rights above civil liberties is to invert the natural organic order. Freedom becomes conditional. Equality becomes statutory. So this is how them impose them demonic devil switch and change subtly. Literally. Or concise presentation with a thesis, court, civil right must be enforced by government to secure equality. Antithesis, sovereign. Civil liberties are inherent freedoms. Government enforcement of rights is control, not liberty. Again, the antithesis of the sovereign is this: civil liberties are inherent freedoms, while government enforcement of rights is in fact control, not liberty. Now, our synthesis is this, and this is from our ceremonial framework. Sovereignty demands liberty first, and rights second. For rights are to attain rights without liberty is in fact servitude guised as equality. Again, clarity. Now, civil rights versus civil liberties or antithesis ledger. Column 1, where we have civil liberties representing freedom retained or maintained. And we'll start with 1, organic, natural origin. Freedom exists prior or before government. Essence: speech, conscience, privacy, assembly. Function: protects the individual from government intrusion. And the color with sunrise emblem and all of these things. We go down to civil rights, authority delegated. Statutory origin: rights are enforced by government action. Essence: equality, access, protection under their law. Function: requires state intervention to guarantee treatment. And this is the image we are talking about. Now, civil liberties, the narrative contrast. We are look at civil liberties restrain government power. Civil rights empower government to regulate whom or what? That piece of paper, that legal entity, not the living man, unless the living man is unaware of his superior position. The Supreme Court's 9-1 ruling affirmed civil rights enforcement, But the sovereign antithesis insists liberty must precede all rights. In other words, sovereignty must precede all man-made corporate given rights, literally. And again, synthesis. Sovereignty demand liberty first, rights second, for rights without liberty are hollow or shallow or non-existent. It's called slavery. Now this is clarity. Yeah, man, complete gratitude. I can leave this short and sweet, but means I man have so much information. I think I go and just chop this off and leave it. Let me see what kind of time I have on the here. Oh, 21 minutes. That's not true, but we can leave this right there and catalog it, and then later I'm gonna throw out some other information and some other information just to catalog these things, bringing honorable clarification to the sovereign expression, the true sovereign expression. Yeah, not just the articulation of being an Indian or being a West Indian. Yeah, we are go above and beyond that and solidify the foundation, make people know say you can't be a slave and run into people's sovereign area or sovereign organization without structuring yourself, removing the yoke, the burden, the slavery from you first. However, if we not teach it, you're not going to learn it, you're not going to know it. And we can't depend on the mainland gurus who are already colonized. These are the only group of people. All right, let me rephrase it. The African Americans, so called, are the only group of people that are indigenous that did not declare independence, did not gain independence, and is totally colonized, enslaved. Officially, yeah, God, congressional records express it clearly. So I'm not talking fallacy. I'm saying, don't take my word. Don't even, accuse or even fight or fuss or try to beat me. Do your own due diligent research to attain the clarity. That's where you'll find the validity. Don't let them teach you from a colonized, enslaved perspective. Apply yourself for yourself. Yeah, man. Take the time out, man. Yeah, man. However, again, our antithesis to the US Supreme Court 9-0 ruling that apply only to its corporate citizenry, members, association, or society has absolutely nothing to do with the West Indians, specifically Ahuuah Indians, in their sovereign state capacity, unregistered, unassimilated, unincorporated, unrestricted, free. That's it. Again, may the Most High guide and protect the item in all the item ways, in all the item endeavors, and bless the item perpetually according to the item desires. Yeah, man. According to the item ability. Yeah, man. According to the item faculty. Yeah, man. I know information are going to disappoint a lot of ones, break a lot of ones' heart. Why? Because we are set the trend, we are doing it first. And we are sure the earth, so we don't need no group for direct or autonomous thoughts. That's why it's autonomous. That's why it's independent. Yeah, man. That's why it seems new to the ones I'm out there. But again, just do your own basic research, apply yourself for yourself so you can qualify, clarify, and validate whatever it is we choose to present. Then, and only then, you may, you know, choose to refute, rebut, or, acknowledge the information for what it is. And that is it. Complete gratitude.